All right, let's dive into one of the biggest stories shaping our world right now, the great tech rivalry. We're talking about the intense, high-stakes chip war between the United States and China. And believe me, this is about so much more than just who makes a faster smartphone. This is a battle for the future of the global economy.
For the longest time, we kind of knew who the big players in technology were, but that's all changed. China's rise from a manufacturing giant to a full-blown tech titan has been absolutely meteoric. It's completely shaken up global supply chains and is really changing the way we think about innovation itself.
And this quote from the Portland's Institute really gets to the heart of it. They're projecting that by 2025, China will be on the cusp of achieving the technological self-reliance Beijing has long pursued. This isn't just an economic plan, you see. It's a massive strategic goal, and it's setting the stage for a whole new kind of global competition.
So how in the world did we get here? Well, first, we've got to wrap our heads around the incredible speed and sheer scale of China's tech boom.
Okay, take a look at this. This chart shows what are called radical novelties. We're talking about breakthrough patents, completely new ideas. Now, the US is still in the lead, but you can see China closing that gap at an incredible pace, especially in super important fields like AI and semiconductors. In just a handful of years, they've gone from playing catch-up to being the main challenger to America's tech leadership.
So here's a crazy question. How long do you think it takes for Chinese innovators to copy a major breakthrough from the US or Europe? The answer is mind-blowing. Just 6 months. That kind of speed completely wipes out the traditional advantage of being the first one to invent something. It just changes the whole game.
Now, as you can imagine, this kind of rapid rise did not go unnoticed. So, in response, the United States started building its own version of a Great Wall. Not one made of bricks, but one made of policies and regulations. And the main weapon in this whole conflict is something called an export control. So, what is that? Put simply, it's a rule the government uses to block the sale of certain technologies to other countries if they think it's a threat to national security. It's a really powerful way to create a technological bottleneck and try to slow a competitor down.
And the US strategy has been very methodical, almost like a playbook. First step, find the choke points, those critical weak spots in the supply chain, like the super advanced machines needed to make the best chips. Second, cut off China's access to that tech. Third, blacklist specific companies, putting them on what's called an entity list. And finally, get your allies on board to do the same thing, making that tech blockade as strong as possible. And you gotta understand, this isn't a one-and-done kind of deal. This policy is constantly evolving. For example, back in late 2024, the US Department of Commerce added over 140 new companies and groups to its blacklist. They're constantly tightening the screws.
But here's the thing. These restrictions haven't actually stopped China. If anything, they've just forced it to adapt and double down on its own efforts. And that's led to what you might call a contested ascent.
At the center of China's strategy is its state-led innovation model, which is a real double-edged sword. On one hand, the pros are huge. They can pour massive amounts of government money into projects and create really tight links between their universities and industries. But on the other hand, the cons are just as big. The system can be super inefficient, it messes with the free market, and, this is the big one, it still has this deep-seated dependency on foreign tech.
And that dependency we just talked about, well, it's never been more obvious than in this all-out race for self-sufficiency, especially when it comes to the tiny little components at the heart of everything, semiconductors.
If you want to see just how serious China is, all you have to do is follow the money. By the third quarter of 2025, their share of global spending on semiconductor equipment shot up to 44%. That makes them the single biggest market in the entire world. They are pouring billions upon billions into building their own domestic chip industry from scratch.
But here's the catch, and it's a huge one. Just throwing money at a problem doesn't always solve it. This table really shows their Achilles heel. I mean, for some of the more mature tech, like etching and cleaning, they're doing okay. They can make about half of what they need. But now, look at that bottom row. For the most important technology of all, advanced lithography, the machines that print the most complex circuits, their self-sufficiency is practically zero. That is the ultimate choke point, and it's still completely controlled by the West.
So you've got this wild situation with massive investment on one side and these critical, glaring weaknesses on the other. So what does this all mean for the rest of the world? What's next for everyone?
This brings us to a really big debate that's happening right now among economists and foreign policy experts. Have we already seen peak China? The idea is that after decades of absolutely jaw-dropping growth, the country's momentum might finally be hitting a wall.
Now, the people who argue for this peak China idea point to some pretty serious headwinds. They see a real estate crisis that just won't end, a huge demographic problem with an aging and shrinking population, and more government interference that's hurting private businesses. And then you layer on top of all that the US-led tech restrictions we've been talking about, which are specifically designed to slow them down.
And it's so important to remember that this is not just a two-player game. This intense rivalry is putting other major powers, especially in Europe, in a really tough spot. They're being forced to make some incredibly difficult choices, and they're scrambling to rethink their own strategies so they don't get left behind in this new world order. All of which leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? In this new era of intense, strategic competition, where technology is everything, who is actually going to be the one to innovate the future?